This is Support is Sexy, episode 425, with Diann Valentine, author of Going the Distance for Love, star of To Rome for Love on Bravo, and founder of The Venus Effect. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm super excited to have you here. As you know, it just would not be the same without you. And if you are a woman entrepreneur who is looking to get your voice out there into the world, to connect with new audiences, and to grow your business, you must consider podcast guesting. And to find out how to be an unforgettable podcast guest, go to girlonpodcastgift.com to download my free guide on how to be an unforgettable podcast guest. That's girlonpodcastgift.com. Top tips on how to be an unforgettable podcast guest for all the right reasons. Now, today, I am super excited about our guest, Diann Valentine, who I have known for so many years. I think we stopped counting after 10 years, but I've known her since my days at Essence Magazine and then many other publications after that. But all throughout that time, all throughout these many years that she's had her business, Diann has been the epitome, really, of glamour and just gorgeous experiences and events that she creates for celebrity weddings or for anyone who is hosting an event and who wants this truly phenomenal experience. Diann is the person. She's the go-to person. She always has been. And what I love about our conversation today is she talks about how her business has evolved. And you know, evolution is something that we talk about a lot on Support is Sexy podcast, evolving, but really also reinvention. And Diann and I talk about that in this episode, how her business has evolved and how she's reinventing, but still always centered around love. Love is really her business and her guide. We talk about how love can be your guide too in your business in a different way by making sure that you truly love what you're doing, what you're creating, that it's not about the money, it's for the love of something else you want to create in your business, but also again about reinvention and having the courage to reinvent so that you not only stay current with whatever you're doing, but also that you can stay passionate about what you're doing and what you're creating. Now, Diann has, of course, the events that she continues to create for people. She also has the Venus Effect, which helps women travel to different parts of the world to find love. And based on that, she's also star of the new show on Bravo, To Rome for Love, which airs every Sunday at 9 p.m. So make sure you check that out. But where we get to see her sort of doing the work that she does with the Venus Effect, taking women to Italy, in this case, to Rome for love, to find love. But what Diann and I also talk about in this episode is her book, Going the Distance for Love, but also how women and women entrepreneurs, or successful women especially, basically stand in our own way when it comes to finding love, the ways that we do that, and her 3 tips for the things that we need to learn to let go of or readjust in our lives so that we can find the love we truly deserve. I will tell you, she was definitely speaking my language. All right, so I know you're going to enjoy this conversation with Diann. It's as much about business as it is about finding love, finding passion for yourself in your relationships and in your business. All right, so now, without further ado, Diann Valentine. So Diann, thank you so much for being here for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to reconnect with you and chat always.
Of course. And we've known each other. I was trying to think of how long it's been. I do everything based on my Essence days. So that's it, more than 10 years ago.
Right. At least 10 years ago.
At least 10 years.
Although it feels like last week, right?
Exactly. And of course, and we didn't age at all during that whole time. So
never.
Exactly. So when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
For as long as I can remember, I always felt like I would be an entrepreneur, from, being a kid to mowing lawns in the neighborhood to washing cars to selling lemonade from a lemonade stand. I think I did it all. So I think I never envisioned myself working for a company, big or small.
What was it about you that you think made you never envision that? Like, what were you seeing in your environment growing up?
Both of my parents were entrepreneurs to a large degree. My father was a general contractor, and him and my mother together amassed a lot of real estate when I was young and when they were still married. And so I would watch them buy apartment buildings. My father would work on them. Sometimes they would flip them. Sometimes they'd hold on to them. So I was just really, inspired by them because being Black growing up in the 70s, wasn't a lot of images, I think, of entrepreneurs, at least not in my immediate neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So my parents were I think, a huge influence, even though I don't think they intended to be. They just were.
Right, because you were witnessing them and what they were doing in their work, even if you weren't calling it entrepreneurship at that time.
Yes, exactly. I just always knew my parents were hustlers, mm-hmm. and they were just always figuring out what the next big thing was, and not like a get rich scheme, but they just always were really steady and very focused. And I always admired that about them. And both my parents are also perfectionists. So I think I got
that's
that
where it all comes from.
As well.
Exactly. Now, where did you grow up?
I'm from Oakland, California.
Oh, Oakland.
Yes, home of the Black Panthers.
Yes. It's so funny. Home of the Black Panthers, but all the women I know from Oakland, or the people I know from Oakland, men and women, always have this sort of ease to them. Like this sort of flow. Yeah, for at least the ones I've met. Maybe I don't know the other side of you.
I think there's an ease. I think the characteristic that describes people I know from Oakland the most mm-hmm. is that we are hustlers. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's because everybody wanted to get out, of Oakland. Right. I don't know if that was it, but definitely, everybody I meet from Oakland is always incredibly driven and determined and hustling to make their dreams come true.
Now, what was a young Diann like growing up in hustling? Did you have in hustling? And we're going to call it hustling now. Growing up in Oakland, did you have that hustling mentality is what I meant to say. I know you admired the entrepreneurship, but was that also a part of you too?
I don't know if it was a hustle growing up, if it was that young, if I was really hustling that young. But I think I've always been incredibly focused and really driven. I've always had great vision. And so I never saw my life where I was. I always saw things the way they could be. Or, I would look at things and I would be like, that's cool, but it could really be this. Or, you know what I mean? I just always had vision I always saw things as bigger, I think, than what they were. And at the time, I don't know that I knew that was hustle. I thought I was just a dreamer.
Right. That's so interesting and this is why I love having these conversations with women entrepreneurs and creatives, because just at least my experience of what I know of your incredible work, hearing you say that you sort of always had this vision for seeing a place, a thing, a space, and being able to see what it could be speaks to just your expertise as a designer of spaces and events and all of those things. You can take an empty space and create something magical where I just see four walls. It's always amazing to see the before and after sort of your events and things that you've done. But hearing you talk about having that vision is just a part of you, would you say?
Yes, it definitely is. And I think, like I said, at the time as a kid, I thought I was just a dreamer. Mm-hmm. I just dreamed a lot. But when you look back on your career and you look back at your humble beginnings, I think we can all see where things started. Right. But of course, when you're in it, you don't know. You're just living. You're just going through life. Mm-hmm.
So now, if people don't know, of course, I'll have a link to Diann's website and a lot of her work, but you have done legendary events. The Diann Valentine event is like no other, honestly. So I've been to many. I've done pictures at many, as working in magazines. It's incredible. And as I said, that's why it's exciting to me to hear about, okay, that vision does come from someplace. That's not something that I'm just going to learn. It's something that she was born with. But when would you say, though, that you realized that designing events and doing these sort of experiences really is more of what it is for people was something that you could translate into a business for yourself?
I think in high school,
Mm,
I started my company when I was a senior in high school, and when I
wow.
started the company, granted, again, hindsight is 2020, but at the time, I had no idea that it would turn into a lifelong career and a lifelong passion for me. I think I was just so dead set on how am I going to pay my way through college? What can help me do it? I had been, class president of seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade. I was
Hmm.
valedictorian. I was on the debate team. I was part of the board of education. So I had always been a leader. And then that just kind of evolved. And I started this business of designing and producing weddings and events. And my vision was that it was just going to pay my way through undergraduate. And then I was going to go to law school.
Oh, so interesting. So even though you were doing design and events in high school, you still had your eyes set on a different kind of more, I shouldn't say traditional, but sort of the path a lot of us are raised to take, especially as Black children, lawyer, doctor,
Yes.
engineer, those kind of things.
For sure. And I think it was mainly because there was no one else, doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know any other Black women or Black men at the time that were in this world of events. I didn't even know it could be a career. I didn't know what it was. So I never dreamed that it would be that.
But how did you, that's interesting. So in high school, what was it though that led you to say, not what was it? Was there an event that someone asked you to plan, or what was it that made you at least take that first step, even if you weren't thinking of it as a business, to say, okay, this is a gig, a job, or whatever, a way to make money that I could do for someone with hosting or creating an event?
Yes, yes, for sure. My cousin was getting married and
Mm,
she didn't, and I'm from Oakland and she didn't live in Oakland at the time. She lived in LA and she asked if I would help her, plan like this multi-$100,000 wedding. And I was like, sure, why not? It'll be fun. And I helped her do her wedding. And then I had so much fun doing it. That's what inspired me to start this business.
okay. So now do you keep it going while you were in college?
I did all the way through college, and then I graduated high school in 1988. In '96 is when I moved to LA,
Where'd you go to school?
Cal State Hayward.
Okay. So did you study law in college, or did you change by the time you got there, or at least halfway through, as many of us do?
No, I studied business administration with an emphasis in marketing and a minor in African American studies.
Mm-hmm.
But my goal was to still go to law school. I think when I was in undergrad and while I was pursuing my degree and running my business is when I really fell in love with love. And
Fell
I
in
felt
love with
like,
love.
yeah, and I felt like with the path that I was on, I never believed that one, it would be a lifelong career. I never believed it would grow into what it has grown into. But I've always, my whole life, I've been connected to love. And so I always knew that love would get me there. Wherever I was going, wherever God was taking me, love was going to get me there.
That's beautiful, Diann. I always knew love would get me there.
Thank you.
Letting that set in for a minute. That's beautiful. But especially when you think about, obviously for you, for your business, but just for people listening, thinking about your own business or whatever you're trying to create, starting from a place of love and
Yeah.
passion and things that you really feel about the business and about what you're creating, really. That's at least what I
Yeah.
got from it.
Yeah. I feel like when our goal is to make money, it often doesn't work out.
I agree.
For
I
some
agree.
people, it does, but for most people, when money is the goal, it never grows into what you think it will be.
So funny. I recently feel like, I guess in the past year or so, because entrepreneurship, fully focused entrepreneurship has only been for me the past few years with not having
Uh-huh.
another, full-time job that I'm pulled back into, et cetera. But I feel like I have discovered in having that shift around focusing on the money as opposed to, for me, it's focusing on what kind of service can I offer to people. And of course, wanting to be paid for those services, but still starting from a place of service or, like you said, a place of love, it has opened up so many doors for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And will continue to do so.
So for you, once you fell in love with love, was that when you finally said, okay, I'm going to make this my business. I'm going to go all in on this?
Yes, yes. Is when I really came to grips with this is where I'm supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Love is it. And again, I never looked at the wedding space as the wedding space. For me, it was love, and it all was birthed out of my desire. Really, I have to credit my parents again, but when I was 7, my parents got divorced. And so when they got divorced, everything changed. Life as I knew it changed. Everything changed. And so for my, from 7 years old, I was really looking for love. I was looking for, how can I find it? Am I going to have my own family? Am I going to get married? How do we put this family back together? All of these emotional roller coasters I think the kids go through when you are the product of a divorce. Mm-hmm. And I just realized that after a while, it was like, well, if I'm not going to have my own family, then how can I just be around it? How can I just be close to people? How can I work in this business of love? And, that used to be my prayer. It wasn't my prayer to be a great, wedding designer, or a great event designer.
Mm-hmm. So then how many now, since you've had the business, how many years has it been now? 90? Oh, I know. That's like
90.
Many years since you've had the business.
About 27 years
27 years. Wow.
Yeah.
So now that you've had the business that long, how many events would you say centered around love, especially, that you've done over the years? What would be your guesstimate?
Oh, gosh. I don't even know. Maybe 100, about 100.
It has to be at least 100.
About 100. But I've never prescribed to be everything to everybody.
Right.
I've never tried to build this huge company, this huge agency. I've always loved having a very small boutique agency, and I work for a niche market. I work for people that also want to do something extraordinary, not just have another party or not just have a wedding, but people call me when they are looking for absolutely something that's going to be extraordinary and life-changing and unlike anything they've ever seen before.
Would you say that that's something that you had to sort of come to terms, isn't the word, but sort of evolve to also, just saying that I'm not going to be for everyone. I'm okay with being a niche, or focusing on my niche, I should say, or being a boutique agency? Or did you always have that mentality going in? And I ask that because so many of us sometimes get caught up in, I need to be everything to everybody, yes. Or, and then you're running crazy and not focused in your business.
I like to think, at least for as long as I can remember, that's been my perspective, because I was a kid who never quite fit in. I wasn't part of the cool crowd. I wasn't part of the cool kids in school, but I was strong enough and I had a strong enough self-esteem that I felt like I didn't need that. Mm-hmm. I felt like I was cool, in my own lane, doing my own thing with my own flow. So I've never tried to fit in anywhere. I've always known that I'm different. And so I've embraced that my whole life. And it's like, why would I want to fit in when we were born to stand out? And it's like, I know, particularly for African Americans, I think as business owners, we constantly focus on how do we cross over and how do we get non-Black clients and how do we grow and how do we expand? And I believe the opposite is that America wants our Blackness. So if you just focus on being Black, people are going to be drawn to you because Blackness drives the culture of everything in America. And it's okay. I'm good being an unapologetically Black girl who works for Black and white women, and women of all nationalities. But I understand that it is the fact that I am different is what people do want. Now, that doesn't mean everybody wants it. Some people don't want it. Right. And I understand that too. And that just shows me that that's not for me, because I'm not somebody who fits in a box. And I know that I can't properly service those clients that want to stay in their box.
Right. And I think it's so important what you said, too, about this idea of you're an unapologetic Black woman or unapologetic Black girl. I like saying that even better. But the fact that you still work with all kinds of clients is clients who appreciate that part of you.
Yes.
Right. It's not I'm a Black girl. I only work with Black girls, although being focused on your niche, nothing wrong with that. I worked at Essence. It was for Black women and many other publications that were like that. But the fact that you can be that and still service a wider audience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that you don't have to define, that part of you. It doesn't have to be based on race. Right. Mm-hmm. But I know everything about me is Black. Mm-hmm. It just is, my style, the way I talk, the way I flow through life, my perspective, my eclecticness, all of that says Black girl. And I think that women that are drawn to me, they can't say they're drawn to my Blackness, but I just think I know that's what it is.
Like, I know that's what it is.
I just know because we just have that. It's just a cultural thing. You know what I mean? It's like Beyonce. You're drawn to her Blackness. You're not drawn to the fact that she's like this, like, amazing Black woman singer, all of that stuff. Like, that's great. But, it's her whole flow. It's her whole persona. And that comes from her being Black, that mesmerizes the world. And we are drawn to that, I believe.
I second that. I love, too, that love of your, obviously, as we talked about, love of your business and what you do is so important and evident in your work. But now that we're speaking about it, that love of self, too, seems to play an important role in what you do as well.
For sure. I tell people I wake up every day with a lot of problems. I do. More money, more problems, more accomplishment, more problems. No doubt about it. But one of my problems is not self-esteem. It's not. My father told me all my life that I was smart, that I was beautiful, that I was capable, that I could do anything I wanted to do. And I had the audacity to believe him. So self-esteem has never been a hurdle for me. However, I do think that you cannot love anybody or anything else if you don't love yourself first. You cannot be passionate about your business if you're not passionate about yourself.
Right.
You cannot go out and sell your business or sell your brand if you feel insecure about the person you look at in the mirror every day. You can mask it and you can think that you are hiding from the world. But what you don't realize is the world can see right through that. They might not say you have a low self-esteem, but they see the insecurity. They see the lack of passion. They see the trepidation when you show up because you can't hide from it. We think we can, but you cannot.
That's true. They see it and they sense it.
Yes.
Sometimes you can't even, that's so true. And like they say, as I've learned another thing over many years now of doing this, a lot of women say your business can only rise to the level of your personal development. So they are related, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So let's talk about now, as you mentioned, I love this segue just from self-esteem and knowing that you can sort of create anything that you want to. And then the idea of having the courage to sort of reinvent, which we talked about a little bit before we started recording, but still focusing on love. But now you've transitioned to help women find love with your new show on Bravo, To Rome for Love, right?
Yeah.
Which is so fun and fantastic. And okay, quick little side story. So my friend April and I went to Italy this was more than 10 years ago. We were young and sprightly and excited and free and single, etc. Went to Italy. I love Italy in general, but Rome was one of the places, Florence and where else? Venice. The men there, I don't know about now, but you're about to tell us, but they love Black women. Oh my goodness. We were like, why are we like celebrities here? What is going on? And why aren't we moving here? It was insane. Just the love, the adoration, just making you feel anyway. So now To Rome for Love. When I saw it, I was like, that's absolutely true. I experienced that. But what would you say is the reason that you encourage women, especially Black women, to go to Rome as the place or to Italy to find love? What is it about it?
Well, just for starters, it's exactly what you said, is that Italian men love Black women. I mean, right?
Yeah.
And Italian men also love lots of different kinds of women. You know, Italian men are just very romantic. So it's not that they only love Black women, but they find Black women intriguing and desirable and beautiful and valued in a way that we don't experience in the U.S. And part of that is because there's simply not a lot of African American women in Rome, right? So just the sheer fact of the numbers certainly makes us stand out. But then aside from that, I feel like there's so many similarities between African American culture and Italian culture because we're both passionate. Food and family are huge parts of who we are culturally. We value family tremendously. We both like to have a lot of fun. We're passionate. We're sexy. All of those things are similarities. But I find the biggest difference with Black women dating Italian men is that the Italian men don't have the same struggles as African American men do in the U.S. So
Italian men in Italy. That's what we're talking about.
yes, Italian men in Italy. So in some ways, they don't have the pressure of being Black in America, right? So they're not constantly dealing with racism. They're not constantly dealing with people that make them feel inferior just because of the color of their skin. And so they ease through life a little better. So, for example, Italian men are incredibly affectionate, and they find great joy in expressing it. Public displays of PDA and all of that. Traditionally speaking, Black men aren't that way. Black men are not as affectionate. And I think part of that is because of the challenges of simply being a Black man. So I want to be clear, though, I'm not saying Italian men are better than Black men. Definitely not. But there is a difference there. And because of the similarities in the culture and the experience that we have when we are there, like I'm very, very well traveled. And I probably took my first trip to Italy about 25 years ago. And I've just been going constantly. I go once a year, twice a year, 3 times. I go as often as I can. And there's not many places in the world where I go and I feel so culturally comfortable. And Italy is that place. I never feel like I'm a foreigner or like I don't belong, or people are kind, people are welcoming, the food is great, people help me with my Italian when I'm there. Very different experience than, say, going to Paris or going to London. I don't feel that same thing. I mean, some parts of Africa that I have been to and did not feel at home. I certainly was expecting to feel that way, but didn't when I got there. So it is certainly something special about Italian culture and African American culture that makes us coexist beautifully together.
Now, when did the idea for the show To Roam for Love on Bravo come up as an idea, or even if before the show, when did the idea of taking other women there to find love, experience love there to Italy come up as an idea, and how did that evolve?
About 5 years ago, I started going to Italy with my girlfriends. At least once a year, we do like a girlfriend's trip. And there was always somebody single in the group. And so I have, for years been telling people that Italians love Black women. So on some of our trips, I would fix up some of my single girlfriends with men. And all the times they would date, they would have a blast. A few times my girlfriends abandoned me and left me on the trip like,
you're right. Bye.
I got things to do that don't include you.
Right.
So after doing that a few times, I just felt like I'm onto something. And so I started a company called the Venus Effect. And at the Venus Effect, we focus on bespoke luxury, very highly curated European excursions for women that are interested in dating Europeans. And then my specialty is Italy, but I've worked with women all over who just want to date European men. And so I've been doing that now for about 5 years. And it's a lot like my business, only non-celebrity. So I work with a very luxury, high net worth clientele that are really serious and really want to find love. And they're not looking for a quick fix like, a dating app, where you can just go on and swipe left and find somebody who's handsome to you. But I work with women that are really serious, really committed, and willing to go the distance to find love wherever that is. And so a couple of years ago, a good friend of mine who is a producer and who was our show creator approached me about a similar concept of women, leaving the country and dating internationally. And it just kind of evolved into To Roam for Love.
So what has the experience been like, would you say, for the women who participate on the show, but also for you in this setting where you are, it's not just a group of friends that you're taking to do, well, you were sort of, as you said, that was part of your business anyway, helping fix up women in other places. What was it like, though, would you say, for the women who participated on the show and really also, as you said, having to be serious about this? This isn't something that's a fling. There are things that you have to do in order to find that relationship.
Right. I would say doing the show was definitely more challenging than working with the women that come to me. And I think there are challenges that Black women have in the U.S. With finding love, and not an impossibility, but I think that every Black woman wants to marry a Black man. It's natural. I think we all assimilate to what is familiar to us. So that is understandable. But the lady, when you say, how do you feel about going to Italy or to Rome to date Italian men and to find love? Everyone says that they are ready for that, but most people aren't. They aren't ready to tackle the cultural differences. Mm-hmm. They aren't necessarily patient. With what they're going to be met with. And then 3, I think that as women, and particularly as Black women, because we're talking about the show, is that we are damaged in many, many, many ways. And we're damaged in the ways in the area of love. And oftentimes we're not willing to confront our baggage that we carry around. And so we go from relationship to relationship, carrying this baggage. And we don't want to come to grips with it. We may be equally to blame for why we have not found love.
And when you say damage, do you mean based on just societal experiences here in the U.S. as a Black woman here, or just damage in our own lives and different things that we haven't resolved in our own relationships?
I think it's what we haven't resolved in our own relationships. And unfortunately, many Black women have had not great relationships with their fathers. Mm. And so when that is your first experience with a man, it will haunt you your entire life if you don't deal with it.
If you don't address it, yes,
I agree. If you do not address it, if you don't deal with it, it will haunt you your entire life. And so we had some of that. Some of the ladies had certainly been disappointed by their fathers. And I think it's a difficult thing to do. And, I applaud the ladies because they were willing to go through this process, on television for the world to see, right, and for the world to judge them every day. And it takes tremendous courage to be willing to do that.
And I think, too, mentioning, issues we have with, some of us have with our fathers, I always share with people that could be if your father is not present. Obviously, there might be some abandonment issues there, but also if your father is present. I know for me, my dad is a very loving, kind person, but I'm saying this now as an older woman that more senior, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm later on in life. When I was a kid, though, I didn't understand that he wasn't a very affectionate person and not a very outwardly loving person. He would do anything for you, but for me, just for everyone listening to think, oh, she's talking about women who don't have their dads around. I had to learn how to understand my relationship with my dad, and that affected me in relationships with men, because I would always go for the men who were sort of this stoic, non-affectionate type, but that's really what I want. I'm like a lovey-gushy person, but I never showed that. So anyway, not to put my personal stuff out there, but I totally want people to understand. Yeah, so if that's not something I addressed through therapy, which is how I did it, somehow, it would still be a hang up for me in relationships.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that, because it just goes back to the fact where I was sharing that Black men are not affectionate. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I think it's because they've had to be so tough their whole lives. Like my father was an amazing father. I still think he was the greatest father ever known to man. I could not have prayed for a better father, but I also don't think my father was a great husband to my mother. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, and there was a difference. So yes, he was a great father and a great man and a great role model for me, but he was not great to my mom. And I applaud her for having the courage to start over, because that's not easy either.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So would you say that the hangups for all women listening is our personal hangups, I should say, is the thing that keeps us sort of in this state of resistance? As I know some of the women on To Rome for Love, there was just this resistance there, even if they couldn't articulate it. But sometimes we don't even realize that we're being resistant to finding the relationship we really want.
Yes, I absolutely believe that. And I think that, it's not comfortable to work on yourself, right? It's not comfortable to even acknowledge that maybe there's some things that I need to work on. And so with the experience with the ladies is I tried to be a mirror for them. I tried to simply show them themselves through their actions and through their decisions that they were making in Rome, because I believe that once we recognize our behavioral patterns, that can be very empowering because now you can say, okay, I recognize that this is a part of who I am and I'm okay with that. I like that. I'm not changing it. Or you can say, you know what? I see that behavior pattern as well, and it's really not serving me. So maybe I do need to make some adjustments in that area. And I think that is the biggest difference between working with the ladies on the show and working with my clients. Clients that come to me, they don't come to me saying, hey, I got a lot of issues, but they come open and willing to do whatever work I feel they need to do to prepare before we ever get to a European country and get into dating.
Right. So that was going to be one of my questions. The clients that you work with outside of the show, are they open to, and do they have access with you to being able to work through some of these problems?
Yes. And I'm certainly not a clinical psychologist
right, of course.
at all, and I don't profess to be one. But I do think that there are really simple, exercises. I call them games. I play games with my clients that we go through, and it's designed to show them themselves. And again, once you see yourself, then you can pinpoint this is how I am, and this has not served me. Like, for example, very successful women, women that are very driven. You always hear them say, I don't have time for love.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's like, well,
I'm guilty of that.
Look, if you ain't got time for love, you don't have time for life.
Right.
Because what is life without love? What kind of life would we live without love? Love is everything. Love is the answer to everything. Love ends wars. Love ends world hunger. It gives us world peace. Like, love is everything. So if you say that you are happy with your career and you do not have love in your life, that is a lie. And you can twist it and rationalize it, any way you want, or any way women want to do that. They can, create whatever stories they want. But a life without love is empty. And it is my personal quest to help fill in the gap, to help bridge the gap between women all over the world and love, because I know how beautiful it is, one, from my own personal experience that I found the love of my life finally. I never thought I would either. But also just seeing, just growing up and having such a strong desire to be around love and to study love and to see it. And to see how people change and evolve and are different when they're in love versus when they are not.
That's right. So speaking about that, let's talk about your new book, Going the Distance for Love, 22 Tips on Handling Your Issues, as we talked about, and finding love wherever it may be. So I'm interested, just based on what you just said so powerfully. I'm going to sit with that. I'm going to have to listen to that again, because I know you're talking to me, Diann. You're talking to me. What would you say, though, are the top 3 tips that you would say for women, especially successful women or women entrepreneurs, et cetera, who do often say, I don't have time for a relationship, and use that as a veil?
Right. Yeah. I would say my number one tip is you have to be open to love those that love you. Now, we all say we want love. We all say we're busy. But even though we are busy, I'm sure there are men that cross the paths of single women all the time that don't necessarily fit the image of love that they thought they were going to find. And so they ignore them and they dismiss them. And they aren't really open to a guy that they think, would ever love them. So that's tip number 1. Number 2, burn your checklist. Burn it, get rid of it. And here's why. I have never met a woman that had a realistic checklist. Now, I believe that you should have very high standards, of course, when you talk about wanting to give your heart and your body, and your everything to a partner. You should have very high standards, but you also should have standards that reflect what you say you want. How much money he makes should not be a priority. His height, why is that important? Whether he has children or not, So, okay, all right. So we got kids. You over 30. Most men will have kids if they're over 30. Loves his mother, makes 7 figures, has an 800 credit score, loves the Lord, has to be a Christian man. Like, all of these things that I hear women have on their checklist. And then somewhere at the bottom, they'll be like, and he needs to be a really good person. You know what I mean? And I just feel like we should be looking at the character of a man, right? Doesn't matter if you dating somebody who is a millionaire. Ask Michelle Obama.
Right.
Did Barack Obama's salary matter to her? Ask her that.
Right. He was an
It's
intern and she was his mentor at the law firm, right?
absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. So it was his character. It was the heart and soul of who he was that she fell in love with. It has nothing to do with all of these superficial characteristics that we put on our checklist, and we insist that we have to have this or we won't look the other way. The other thing about that I will say about a checklist is too often I meet women that have these extensive checklists that they don't measure up to.
So they have this expectation for things from the man that they don't have those qualities in themselves.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a man to make 7 figures, but you only make 5,
mm-hmm.
why would you think he's necessarily going to be drawn to someone who's not on his level financially? Now, maybe he wants a trophy wife. That's another conversation. But
Right.
If you are expecting something out of your potential partner, then you should just make sure that you measure up to all of the things that you're expecting out of him. You should ask yourself, would I fulfill these things if they are on his checklist?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, that's a time for self-reflection. So, and then my third tip would be, don't get stuck in life. So often we get stuck. We get stuck because we have a great career and we're on this path of growth, or we get stuck because we have kids and we feel like, our life has to focus only on the kids and not on ourselves. Or, we get stuck because we have this unrealistic checklist and we go, I have to marry this kind of man. He has to make this. He has to make all this stuff. And so we just say, okay, Lord, I'm just going to sit here and pray until you send him to me.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, God is like, I've sent you so many great men.
Right.
But yet you can only see through your tunnel vision because you're too full of yourself to realize that you have passed up what could have been 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of the greatest love affairs of your life.
Wow. Would you say that in your experience, in your relationship, you say you found the love of your life, would you say that you had to sort of open yourself up to the possibility that it's not going to either happen? Because sometimes I think we don't even necessarily get caught up in what the person has to look like or be like. We're so caught up in how it's going to happen. Even that can hold you back, I think. Or I didn't meet this person through this route, so this must not be the right person. So was there any of that for you that helped you find the love of your life, finally opening up with some of these tips that you mentioned?
I think that my husband definitely did not fulfill my checklist. He did not. He didn't look like him. He didn't have the same swag. He didn't make the money I thought he should make. He just all of these things that were so superficial. And, fortunately, my husband and I were friends for just like 6 years. So we weren't anything other than friends. And I wasn't interested in him at all because of this checklist, because he didn't fulfill the things I thought I needed. But as
you had him in the friend zone.
Absolutely. He was in the friend zone. And he used to hook me up. He used to set me up on dates with all of his friends that were complete losers. And I would be like, you're so awful.
Uh-huh.
But over time, I remember vividly how I used to, in my prayer time, I would just be like, Lord, well, if you could just send me a man like Damon. If you could just send me somebody like him, or somebody
and God is like, seriously?
Right. Exactly. So the beautiful thing is that I did fall in love with the heart and soul of who my husband is. And, it just so happens that now he is incredibly successful. He is the most handsome man on the planet, in my opinion, to me. And he fulfills everything on my checklist. But I think that life isn't always as gracious as it was to me. So I had an opportunity to be his friend for so long and then ultimately become his love interest. But too oftentimes we meet great men and we dismiss them, we ignore them, we keep them in the friend zone. We won't even explore the possibility of anything else. And then maybe eventually we look back on our lives and go, oh my God, he was a great guy. How did I miss him?
Mm-hmm.
or we see him years later, successful, married with children, and we go, maybe slightly wish that was us.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I've been there. I don't want to talk about that. Like, yeah, that's true.
yeah, just about every woman I know has been there.
Yeah,
So
has been there. Just wonder exactly. And I think too, so no one beats themselves up too much who's listening, but I think it's important too to think about, people come at different stages of your life too. So someone who, in your 20s that you didn't want might be someone who, as you said, you were friends with your husband for several years before you finally decided, okay, maybe this is something I should give a chance to.
Yes, for sure. But I also think that we have to learn the lessons in life.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer that we prolong the lessons, the longer we're in the learning mode. See, people come into your life, yes, for a season, for a reason, to teach you something, all of these things. However, if we do not learn those lessons when people come into our lives, we will continue to experience the same kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't learn the lessons. Yes, maybe somebody you met in your 20s was not for you, but was a great guy, and he was there to teach you something. But if you didn't learn it when you were 21, and you didn't learn it when you were 27, and you didn't learn it when you're 32, and you still haven't learned it at 38,
he's gone.
You have to look in the mirror.
Right.
And so my book is really it's about self-love. It's about accountability. So it's about us being absolutely accountable for ourselves and for our lives, because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that as women, we are the strongest beings on the planet. We can carry the weight of the world on our shoulders and not buckle under pressure. So nothing is more inspiring to me than women. But I believe that we have to be accountable for the lives that we have created and the lives we say we want. If you want a different life, then create it.
Right.
Because you have the power to do that. No one else.
Do you find that the women who come, your clients again outside of the show, who come to you for the Venus effect, that they are women who are, I would imagine, successful, because you said at a certain level as far as income or those kind of things come to you. But would you say that they are in a space, most of them, of wanting to get married, or are more of them just looking for fun and to date outside of the U.S. and that kind of thing? I'm just curious what kind of clientele tends to show up at your door.
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's women that want to be married, and it's also women that don't necessarily need to be married, but are looking for, a long-term monogamous committed relationship.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I have never worked with a woman who only wants to go to Europe and have a fling. Right.
You're really looking at loving relationships.
Yeah. And I don't think I want to work with that girl. I mean, it might be fun, but, I think at this point in my career, for me, it's about doing work that is meaningful and doing work that is changing the world and changing women and changing what families look like and our commitment to family. So that's a personal perspective of mine, but, I don't know. I just feel like if people want to go to Europe and just want to have fun, they don't need me.
Right.
There's plenty of people that can call a travel agent, do that.
Right. Would you say, of course, you're not going to share names, but would you say there's someone that you've worked with that you either are just very excited about how she did find love and how that relationship evolved, or her experience that she's going through now with looking for a relationship in Italy or elsewhere that you can share with us?
For sure. A couple of the women that I have worked with are now married to European men. One moved to Amsterdam. Another, they live bi-coastal. Another couple are here in the U.S. And I have a 76% success rate.
Yes, Diann, that's awesome.
Thank you. And when I say success rate, it means that 76% of the women that have worked with me, they are either married or in a long-term loving relationship.
And some of them do. That was going to be my next question. Some of them do move to wherever their partner is, or some come back to the U.S.
Yes. And I do think that part of that is a function of economics, because when you have money, you can live anywhere. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? When you have money, long distance relationships are not even a factor. You don't even think about it because you know how simple it is to just hop on a plane.
Right.
But I also think there's a misconception that you have to be rich to date someone that lives in another country, because I also don't believe that. Because what I know for sure is that it's cheap to travel now. Travel used to be really, really expensive, and it's not. You know what I mean? You can get an advance notice and some planning, you can get a flight to Europe for $500, and you can stay in an Airbnb.
Right. And that's so true. Is like you said, with the advance notice, people think of when they're looking for a ticket for like this weekend. Of course, it's going to be thousands of dollars.
Of course. But there are, between technology and the way that the cost of travel has dropped, no distance should be too far to keep you from exploring a love possibility wherever you can find it.
So true. I know someone who is married. She's married now for several years, but when she and her now husband, but boyfriend first met, she was in the U.S. in Brooklyn, and he was in London, and then they got engaged, and she was going to move there, but it just took time for her to do all this paperwork and things that she needed to do, so she was sort of stuck in the U.S. Now they visited each other, but to your point about technology, they spoke, I think it was via Skype almost every night or every other night, and there's so many other ways to stay in touch with each other now that weren't like before. It used to just be hundreds of dollars in phone calls. But now you can do it with so many ways. Excellent. So, Diann, what would you say that your personal support network looks like, either personal or in your business?
I would say my support network is really my family. So my husband is my best friend. He's my biggest cheerleader. He's my business partner. So we do everything together. And I love it. You know, I love having him. I love doing life with him. I love doing business and life with him. So he's a tremendous support, of course, and then my family. Professionally, yes, I have a few mentors myself in the television space and the business space. Certainly people I admire, people I go to for advice. And then there's those people that I don't even know that are my mentors that don't even realize it. You know, for example, Diddy. You know, we talked about, before we started, just about reinventing ourselves and evolving in our careers. And one of the things I've always admired about him the most is the way that he is able to constantly reinvent himself. And yes, he has a lot of money and he has a lot of businesses and a lot of things he can play with, but I feel like I can too. You know what I mean? I feel like I can shift. I can shift in my business. I can shift in my way of thinking. I can decide I want to work in this business of love in a different capacity. And I can do it as long as I'm willing to do the work and prove that I'm qualified to do it.
Such a good point. I think to your point about Diddy, yes, he has all of these things, but I think because he was willing to reinvent, he has all of these things to play with, just as you do now, is because you're willing to not just stay stuck in one industry or one space, but still having the core of what you do, like for you being about love, but you're finding even more ways to do that and to be of service to people.
Yeah, for sure.
How long have you and your husband been married now?
8 years.
8 years. Oh, beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. What would you say that entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
That I am stronger than I realize. You know, being an entrepreneur I always say is not for the weak at heart.
Right.
You know, I have had my company since I was a senior in high school. So I've been an entrepreneur my entire life, and I have rode really, really good times. I remember the Clinton years like yesterday, the land of milk, when money was flowing like milk and honey, as I used to say. And I've also weathered really tough times. You know, I've weathered this last recession, and although Wall Street will say that the economy is booming, it ain't booming over here. So, you know, I've weathered really good and really bad times, and it has just taught me that I'm a lot stronger and a lot more resilient than I would probably define myself as.
That's another reason, too, for people listening to think about reinvention, because you never know where the economy is going to go. So if you're stuck doing just one thing and not being willing to shift or evolve in your business, you can get left behind.
Yes. And I think I've always had my hands in a number of different things. So even when I was doing just weddings, so it was weddings and it was events, and then it grew to interior design. And then I wrote a book, and then I hosted my first show, and then I went on to host a number of other shows. So I think that I've never limited myself to one particular industry. And some might say that's being unfocused, but for me, it was really about me knowing that I needed to always evolve and grow and do more and do different. And yeah, maybe if I were more focused, I might have a more successful business if I made widgets and sold them to Ace Hardware or Home Depot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that wouldn't be personally fulfilling for me. It wouldn't be my destiny fulfilled. Right. I'm real clear that love is my destiny. And I don't know where I'm going ultimately or how my story will end, but I do know that love will take me there.
Love will take you there. That's right. So in closing, Diann, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
That's probably easy. That would be... Can I thank two?
Sure, sure.
It would be my mom and dad, and for different reasons. I think that my father just instilled so much love in me and so much confidence and resilience and heart and soul I got from my father, and a tremendous work ethic that I got from him that no one else has been a better teacher in that regard. And then my mother, because, again, my mother has been resilient. My mother is an entrepreneur. My mother only has a formal 8th grade education, but you would never know it speaking with her. And you wouldn't believe the things that she has accomplished because she's just such an amazing woman. And she never looks at anything in life as being impossible. She always sees things as just something that she needs to figure out and something more that she needs to learn. And, I think it's important, not just important, but I think it speaks to why family is so important to me and why my circle is really small and why I'm so close to my daughter, my husband, is because my parents were my everything. And I discovered that they were enough.
Mm-hmm. And that you are enough.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think it's so evident too, especially like you said from your dad, just this instilling in you that you are enough and you can do what you want to do and create.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I never doubted it. I've certainly had my doubts, but I never doubted if I could do it. I always doubted, how am I going to do it?
Right. It's always about the how. That's why I tell people, let go of the how. Just be confident that you can figure it out. And the right people will come along the way. Excellent. Thank you so much, Diann. What are the ways you have to tell us how we can support you now? Also, I'll make sure that I have links to Diann's website, but tell everyone what that is and social media and how we can get your book.
Oh, thank you. Yes, you can find me everywhere at DiannValentine.com, and that's DIANN and then VALENTINE.com. My website, social media, anywhere to find me in the world is by my name. And you can find my book on the website at DiannValentine.com, and it's also for sale on Amazon.
Excellent. Diann, thank you so much. It was enlightening for me. I will admit that. But thank you so much. I'm so, like I said, happy to reconnect with you and just see how you're continuing to evolve, and all centered around love. Love being the guide.
Love, love, love. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm thrilled to reconnect with you. And I look forward to doing it again.
Excellent. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Let's see. One piece of advice is to remember that no matter what life throws at you, no matter what struggles you come up against as a woman, as a female entrepreneur, always know that whatever you are facing is there because you are equipped and capable of handling it.
Amen. Diann Valentine, thank you so much. Hold on just a second. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Diann. For more, to find out how to find out more about her services, about her book, and how to find love, make sure you go to supportissexypodcast.com. Go to that search icon at the top and just type in Diann, DIANN. That's DIANN. And and you'll find out all about her and how to get in touch with her and how to buy her book and find love. All right, I appreciate you being here. As I always say, it would not be the same without you. Please make sure that we're connected on social media so you and I can stay in touch at Elayne Fluker, at Support is Sexy. I'd love to hear from you. Now, until we chat again, always remember, you deserve support. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.